Chapter 3 of The Dirt Bike Racer. We talked. Our conversation covering Lugmanier and Skitch Bentley and the Kleins, who, Tony was more and more convinced, had owned the Johnny Joe. I was beginning to wonder if fixing up the mini bike to get it running again would be worth it, if they eventually would come round and claim it. It wasn't till 4:30 that Mr. Reston arrived, pulling the trailer behind his car. "Sorry, boys," he said apologetically. "Took me longer to finish the job than I expected." He saw the algae-stained mini bike and his eyes widened. "Wow, so that's it, is it? Think you can ever get it to run again?" "I hope so," I said. "Well, let's get it onto the trailer." It was no job lifting it on. There was also plenty of room for our bikes and scuba equipment. Mr. Reston drove off. At home again, he backed up into our driveway and we lifted off the 3 bikes. "Thanks a million, Mr. Reston," I said. "Can I pay you something? At least to cover the gas?" "Don't insult me, Ron," he said. "I'm willing to give you and your parents a hand any time, you know that." "Thanks, Mr. Reston," I said, smiling. I'm sure glad we have you for a neighbour." My mother came out onto the side porch, wondering what the commotion was all about. Then she stood there with her mouth open as she stared at the mini bike. "Where in the blazes did you get that animal from?" she asked finally. I told her. All the while she kept staring at me as if I had lost my mind. Nobody's eyes can get bigger than my mother's when she sees something that catches her by surprise, and of course the mini bike did. "What do you think you're going to do with it when it's all cleaned up and fixed up?" she said wonderingly. "Ride it naturally," I said. "What does a guy do with a bike?" "Watch your tongue, young man," she snapped, shifting her eyes from the bike to me. "Or I'll have you take the thing back to where you got it from." "I'm sorry, Ma," I said. "I didn't mean it to sound like that. I didn't think she'd ever force me to do that, but I wasn't going to take any chances." Tony and I scrubbed the bike with a couple of brushes, then kept wiping it with paper towels. YZ80C showed up on its side. YZ80C, I read. "Is that the model, Tony?" "Right. I wonder what my father would say when he got home from work and saw it." He never told me whether he ever owned a motorcycle. We had talked about a lot of things he did when he was young. His fishing, his interest in skin diving, and never about motorcycling. Would he care if I kept it? Some fathers wouldn't let their kids own a motorbike, even if it was given to them. The strongest reason they had against it was the danger of getting into an accident. But then, that was the danger with a bicycle too. Or with a tricycle, a skateboard, or even a sled for that matter. Tony and I were still at it when my father's blue sedan pulled up into the driveway. He slowed down alongside us, staring at the bike, then at me. "Well," he said, "whose is it?" I wet my lips, which for some reason had suddenly become dry. "Mine," I answered. He stared at me. "Yours? Where did you get it?" "We pulled it out of Pumpkinhead Lake. Tony and I were scuba diving there this afternoon, and we saw it in the water about, well, I don't know, maybe 50 feet deep." He stared hard at me. "Didn't you have your depth gauge with you?" "Yes." "Then you should have known how deep it was." My heart pounded. Why did he have to bring up my breaking the rule now? "I should have," I said. My insides were hurting. "But I can't remember the depth exactly, Dad. I saw this dirt bike down there, and I didn't think much more about how deep I was going. I just know it couldn't have been more than 50 feet because I checked my depth gauge just before that, and it read 40 feet. He seemed to accept that as final, then drove the car into the garage. I sighed with relief and looked at Tony. I don't know, I said uncomfortably. Maybe you should have it, Tony. Not on your life, he said. She's your baby. I wondered then if I'd picked up a monster instead of just a dirt bike. After a while, Tony had to leave. It was getting near supper time. Want me to ask Mike to come and look it over for you, he offered. He can tell you exactly what parts you need fixed or changed to get that bike running again. I sure would appreciate it, I said, but whether I can afford the parts for it is another thing. Tony glanced at my father, then back at me. See you later, he said. He put his scuba equipment and towel into the pannier of his bike and pedalled off. I won't mind your having that bike, said my father, who was showing more interest in it now than I'd expected. But there are a couple of things you'd better check on first. I looked at him. Like what? Like who owned it before? I can call up Dick Thomas, my attorney, and see what the law is regarding that. The second thing is you'll have to find your own way to pay for the parts. Some of the weight disappeared from my chest. Why, sure, Dad, I smiled, thrilled that he'd let me keep the bike. I'll look for a job. I'm not a little kid anymore. Right. And once you get it running, because with Mike Franco's help, I'm sure you will, you'll have to learn to give it more respect than you would an ordinary bicycle. This thing has a single-cylinder, 2-cycle engine, and it eats up miles quicker than a bike. I know that, Dad. You don't have to tell me, I said. Our eyes met. I'm sure you do, he replied, smiling. And I just want to remind you of it. I don't want you to get hurt. I'll remember that, I promised. Safe diving, safe driving, safety in everything came my father's book. It had been impressed on him when he had taken up skiing and scuba diving, and he had impressed it on me when he had taught me how to dive. The porch door opened and my mother stuck her head out. You men ready to leave that toy for a few minutes? She asked. Dinner's ready. We grinned. We'll be right in, Dorothy, said my father. We went in, washed our hands and sat down to eat. Our topic while eating dinner was the topic of the moment, the mini bike. Would I have to have a licence? Could I drive it on the streets? Did I intend to race it? My answers to those questions were, I don't know yet. I just found the bike. Give me time. I finished eating before my mother and father and fidgeted in my chair. Pretty excited about the bike, aren't you? Said my father. I shrugged. Yes, I guess I am. Well, of course I was. I hadn't said that I'd planned on racing it, but in the back of my mind, that's what I was thinking I would do. I couldn't wait till I had all the new parts for it, till it was fixed up and ready to go. I don't think I was even more excited about anything in my life than getting that mini bike to go again. But first, my father had to make an important call to his lawyer. There was no sense in doing anything until that call was made. He telephoned his lawyer that evening. When he hung up, he had a sad look on his face. My chin must have dropped a foot. Then suddenly his eyes flashed, and the sad look changed into a smile. It's okay, I cried. I can keep the bike. He nodded. Dick remembered that situation. The client had everything insured and were paid by the insurance company, making it free and clear for you to keep the bike. Hey, that's just great, just great. Tony and Mike came over at 7 o'clock. Mike was about half a head taller than Tony and 20 pounds heavier. 3 nights a week he worked at the movie theatre taking tickets from the customers. Hey, a YZ80C Johnny Joe, he exclaimed unenthusiastically. A real killer, man. Killer. I stared at him. Don't say that too loud, Mike. My folks hear that word and I'm dead. He grinned. It really doesn't mean what it says, Ron. Killer, when you're talking about a bike, means that it's a great machine, one of the best. He sat on its seat, grabbed the handlebars, pressed gently on the starting pedal. Then he kicked it hard. Nothing happened. Naturally, the battery was dead. He got off it and looked it over with his expert eye. Besides a battery, you'll have to get lights, new fork springs, a new ignition, a new plug, and probably a new air cleaner. The water could have fouled that up, and probably a lot of other things too. We should be able to save the chain. Each part he listed was an X number of dollars I had to earn to get the bike in running order again. It couldn't go into the hundreds, I thought, more than I would ever be able to earn in 6 months, let alone a few weeks. Suddenly, I didn't feel very good. Well, are we going to get with it, or just stand on 2 feet stargazing at it? Asked Mike. Get with it, I said. But get with what? What did he figure on doing? Let me take it to my place, he offered, answering part of my question. We've got a bigger garage than you have. I can start working on it right away. That is, if it's okay with you. I stared at him, my heart pumping. You mean that, Mike? Would I say it if I didn't? I grinned. Suddenly the world was a whole lot brighter. You're a pal, Mike. A real great guy. Stuff that's sweet talk, he said, and let's get this killer moving. We pushed it to Mike's garage, where his Honda took up some space on one side of the 2-car garage. His father's car sat on the other side. There was more cleaning to be done on the mini bike. Under Mike's skillful direction, he, Tony and I removed parts, cleaned them, polished them almost to a shine, and oiled them when necessary. 10 o'clock rolled around before we realised it. I don't mind working on it all night, said Mike, but our fathers will be on our tails if we don't call it quits for now. We'll get back on it tomorrow afternoon. I've got some errands to do in the morning, and I have to be at the theatre tomorrow night. How long do you think it will take before it will be ready to run, Mike? I asked anxiously. It depends. You'll have to get parts. A new speedometer, turn signals, horn, lights, shocks, a battery. The engine will need an overhauling. So might the clutch. One thing going for it. It wasn't sitting in salt water. That really would have ruined it. I felt sick. The parts were going to run into money, and I could not just let Mike put a lot of his time into the bike without me giving him something. He found a pad and pencil on the workbench and began writing. When he finished, he handed the top sheet to me. That's for a start, he said. Most of the parts were water damaged. Best thing to do to replace them with new. I read some of the parts he had on the list. Shocks, plug, 26mm carb. I frowned. 26mm carb? I looked at Mike. What's a 26mm carb? I asked. You are new, aren't you? He said, grinning. It's a carburettor with more trick to it than a 19mm. This baby is already equipped with a quiet pipe, so you won't have to worry about too much noise bothering the neighbourhood. Got it? Got it, I said, but I wasn't sure that I did. That's the end of chapter 3.